The morning Dr. Elena Vasquez discovered that humanity was alone in the universe was also the morning she learned they were considered monsters. It started with coffee. Elena had just poured her third cup when every screen in the International Space Research Station lit up with the same impossible message. Greetings, inhabitants of the third planet. We come in peace to evaluate your species for membership in the Galactic Concordat. Elena dropped her coffee mug. It floated in the zero gravity, spinning slowly as brown droplets scattered like tiny planets around her laboratory. Outside the viewing port, something that definitely wasn't human technology hung in space near Earth's moon. The ship looked like a crystal cathedral made of light and metal. It stretched for kilometers, its surface shifting between colors that human eyes had never seen before. Smaller vessels moved around it like glowing fish swimming around a coral reef. Elena's hands shook as she activated the communication system. Around the world, every government was probably doing the same thing. First contact. After decades of searching the stars, wondering if humanity was alone, the answer had come to them. The alien voice that came through the speakers was calm and musical. It spoke perfect English, then switched to Mandarin, then Spanish, then dozens of other languages Elena recognized, and many she didn't. I am Ambassador Zeth Kari of the Veltar Crystalline Collective. We represent the Galactic Concordat, a peaceful union of 12 advanced civilizations. We have monitored your species' development and have come to conduct a cultural evaluation. Elena's heart raced. Cultural evaluation. That sounded promising. Maybe humanity was about to join a galactic community. Maybe they would share technology, knowledge, art. Maybe the stars would finally be open to them. Over the next 3 days, the aliens made contact with every major government on Earth. They were polite, patient, and incredibly advanced. Their translators were perfect. Their knowledge of human history was detailed and accurate. They answered questions about faster-than-light travel, energy sources, and medicine with casual ease. The alien delegation included 12 different species. Elena watched the broadcasts in amazement as creatures of living crystals spoke with beings made of flowing energy, while plant-like entities that communicated through color changes stood beside tall, elegant humanoids with silver skin. Each species had been spacefaring for thousands of years. Each had joined the Concordat after proving they were civilized, peaceful, and worthy of membership in galactic society. Your species shows great potential, Ambassador Zeth Kari explained during a global broadcast. Your scientific achievements in such a short time are remarkable. Your art and literature demonstrate creativity and depth. However, we must observe your culture more closely before making our final determination. Elena felt hopeful. The aliens seemed impressed with human achievements. They praised human music, human stories, human scientific discoveries. They marveled at the internet, at global communication, at how quickly humans could share information across their entire planet. But then came the military demonstration. The United Nations had decided to show the aliens that humanity could defend itself if necessary. They weren't trying to threaten anyone. They just wanted to prove that humans weren't helpless. The demonstration was supposed to impress the aliens with human engineering and coordination. Elena watched the live feed as fighter jets performed aerobatic maneuvers above the Pacific Ocean. Warships launched missiles at target drones. Soldiers demonstrated precision marksmanship and tactical coordination. The human military showcased their best technology, their finest training, their most impressive capabilities. The alien observers watched in complete silence. After the demonstration ended, Ambassador Zeth Kari requested a private communication with world leaders. Elena, along with millions of other people, watched as the alien's image appeared on screens around the globe. The ambassador's crystalline face showed no emotion, but something in the way the light moved through its body suggested disappointment. We have completed our evaluation, Zeth Kari announced. After extensive observation of your species, we have reached a unanimous decision. Humanity is too violent and barbaric to join civilized galactic society. The words hit Elena like a physical blow. Around the world, people stared at their screens in shock and disbelief. Your species glorifies warfare, the ambassador continued. You create entertainment based on conflict and violence. Your history is an endless cycle of wars, conquests, and destruction. Even your sports involve competition and simulated combat. You have weapons capable of destroying your own planet, and you point them at each other. Elena's mind raced. Yes, humans had wars. Yes, they competed with each other, but they also had art, science, love, cooperation. They had people who dedicated their lives to helping others, to healing, to building instead of destroying. We have studied your literature, your films, your games, Zethkari said. Everything your species creates involves conflict, struggle, and violence. Even your children's stories feature battles between good and evil. This is not the mark of a civilized species. The ambassador paused, and Elena could hear her own heartbeat in the silence. Furthermore, your military demonstration has confirmed our fears. You have turned the tools of science into weapons of destruction. You have organized your most intelligent individuals into groups dedicated to finding new ways to kill each other. This is barbarism, not civilization. Elena wanted to scream at the screen. Yes, humans fought, but they also cooperated on a scale no other Earth species had ever achieved. They had built a global communication network. They worked together on space stations, on medical research, on solving problems that affected everyone. Therefore, the ambassador concluded, the Galactic Concordat has decided to quarantine your solar system until such time as your species evolves beyond its violent nature. This may take thousands of years. We will monitor your progress, but you will not be permitted to leave your star system or make contact with civilized species. The alien ships moved into position around the solar system. Elena watched through telescopes as they deployed some kind of energy barrier at the edge of human space. The barriers glowed with the same impossible colors as the alien ships, and every probe humanity sent toward them simply disappeared. Elena stared out at the stars she would never reach and felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. The aliens had judged humanity based on their worst traits, while ignoring their best ones. They had decided that competition and conflict made humans barbarians without understanding that these same traits had driven every human achievement. The same fighting spirit that had created weapons had also conquered diseases, explored dangerous places, and pushed the boundaries of science. The same competitive nature that had led to wars had also led to the Olympics, to space races, to the drive to be better, stronger, smarter. Elena looked at the alien energy barriers surrounding Earth and made a decision that would change everything. If the aliens thought humans were barbarians because they fought, then maybe it was time to show them what human barbarians could really do. She pulled up her research files on exotic matter and gravitational manipulation. Her work had been theoretical before, considered too dangerous to actually attempt. But now, trapped in a cage made by beings who called themselves civilized, Elena began to think that being civilized was overrated. If the aliens wanted to see human barbarism, she would give them something that would make their crystalline faces crack with fear. She would show them what happened when you trapped the descendants of persistence hunters and tool makers and told them they weren't allowed to reach for the stars. The universe was about to learn that sometimes barbarism was exactly what the situation required. 6 months after the quarantine began, humanity had tried everything. Dr. Elena Vasquez floated in her laboratory, watching the latest failed escape attempt on her computer screen. The Chinese had built their fastest ship yet, loaded it with their best technology, and sent it racing toward the edge of the solar system at a speed that should have impressed even the aliens. The energy barrier swallowed it like it was nothing. No explosion, no debris, no signal. One moment, the ship was there. The next, it was gone. Another failure to add to the growing list. Elena switched to another feed showing the European Space Agency's attempt to communicate through the barrier using quantum entanglement. The signal went out perfectly, but nothing came back from the other side. It was like shouting into a soundproof wall. On her third screen, she watched protesters gathering outside the United Nations building in New York. Signs reading "Free Humanity" and "We Demand Justice" filled the streets. The protests had been going on for months, but the alien ships hanging in Earth's sky never responded. Elena's tablet chimed with a new message from Dr. James Chen, her old friend from graduate school. Elena, are you seeing this? Check the deep space monitoring station data from yesterday. She pulled up the files James had sent. The data showed gravitational wave readings from the quarantine barriers. Elena had been studying these readings for months, trying to understand how the alien technology worked. The barriers weren't just energy fields. They were doing something to space and time itself. Her hands moved quickly across the keyboard, running calculations she had done hundreds of times before. The barriers created artificial gravity wells at the edge of the solar system. Anything that tried to pass through got caught in what was essentially a localized event horizon. But yesterday's readings showed something new. The gravitational signatures weren't constant. They pulsed in a regular pattern, like a heartbeat. Elena ran the data through her analysis programs and felt her excitement growing. The barriers weren't just walls. They were powered by something that created regular gravitational disturbances, something small but incredibly dense, something that bent space and time around itself. Elena's breath caught in her throat. The aliens were using artificial black holes to power their quarantine system. She immediately called James Chen in Beijing and Captain Sarah Morrison at the military research facility in Colorado. Within an hour, they were connected on a secure video call that Elena hoped the aliens weren't monitoring. "You're telling me," Captain Morrison said, her weathered face serious on the screen, "that those crystal bastards are using black holes to keep us trapped?" "Microscopic ones," Elena explained, sharing her data. "Probably created through controlled gravitational collapse of exotic matter. The barriers aren't just energy, they're localized distortions in space-time itself." James leaned forward on his camera. "Elena, if you're right about this, then the aliens just made a huge mistake." "What do you mean?" "Think about it. They called us barbarians because we turned scientific discoveries into weapons. Well, they just handed us the most dangerous power source in the universe and told us we can't leave until we become peaceful." "Captain." Morrison's eyes lit up with the kind of look that had probably terrified enemy soldiers for decades. "You're talking about weaponizing a black hole." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "Sarah, that's insane. The energy requirements alone would be astronomical. And if something went wrong, we'd all die," Morrison finished. "But if we do nothing, we stay in this cage forever. The aliens made it clear they're not changing. Their mind's about us." James was already running calculations on his computer. "It's theoretically possible. Elena's research on exotic matter manipulation was always focused on black hole physics. If we could extract one of these microscopic black holes from the barrier system, we could modify it," Elena said, her mind racing despite her fear. "Increase its mass through controlled feeding of exotic matter. Create a gravitational weapon that could tear holes in the barriers." "Or tear holes in reality itself," Morrison added grimly. "Elena, I've seen your classified research proposals. The government turned them down because they were too dangerous to test. This might be our only chance to actually try them." Over the next month, Elena found herself leading a secret project that made every previous human scientific endeavor look safe and reasonable. They called it Project Pandora, because once they opened this particular box, there would be no closing it again. The team grew slowly and carefully. Elena recruited physicists who specialized in exotic matter research. Morrison brought in engineers who had worked on classified gravitational manipulation experiments. James coordinated with computational specialists who could model black hole physics. Every addition to the team had to sign documents that made it clear they might be participating in the end of human civilization. Elena lost sleep wondering if she was trying to save humanity or destroy it. Meanwhile, the alien observers continued their studies. Elena had noticed that one particular alien, a mantis-like creature called Crixtal, seemed especially interested in human behavior. It spent hours watching human news broadcasts, studying human entertainment, and analyzing human social interactions. Unlike the other aliens who seemed disgusted by human culture, Crixtal appeared fascinated. Elena had seen it watching human sports with what looked like genuine interest, studying the way humans competed and cooperated within the rules of games. During one of her late-night research sessions, Elena detected unusual readings from the alien observation post near Earth's moon. Someone was running deep scans of human technological capabilities. The scans were more detailed than anything the aliens had done before, focusing specifically on human weapons research and theoretical physics. Elena realized that Crixtal was studying human scientific literature. The alien had access to every published paper, every patent, every research proposal that had ever been put online. It was learning how humans thought about physics, how they approached problems, how they turned theoretical concepts into practical applications. If Krixtal understood human scientific thinking, then it might eventually realize what Project Pandora was attempting to do. Elena had to make a choice: abandon the project or take the risk that an alien might discover their plans. She chose to take the risk. The alternative was accepting permanent imprisonment. The breakthrough came when Elena's team successfully modeled the extraction process. They could build a device that would reach into one of the quarantine barriers and pull out the microscopic black hole powering it. The device would need to be positioned at exactly the right location, with perfect timing, and operated by people willing to risk everything on a single attempt. Elena looked at the design specifications for what they had. Started calling the gravity hammer. It was elegant, terrifying, and completely insane. The device would use controlled gravitational fields to extract a black hole roughly the size of a proton, but with the mass of a small moon. Then they would feed it exotic matter until it became powerful enough to tear through space-time itself. Captain Morrison studied the plans with professional interest. "How many ways can this kill us?" "I stopped counting after the first dozen," Elena admitted. "But James ran the scenarios. If we do nothing, humanity stays trapped for centuries. If we try this and fail, we probably die quickly." "And if we succeed?" Elena looked out at the alien ships hanging in Earth's sky like beautiful, arrogant jewels. "Then we show the universe what human barbarians can do when you back them into a corner." The construction of the gravity hammer began in secret facilities around the world. Elena found herself coordinating with governments that had never cooperated on anything before. The promise of freedom, or the threat of permanent imprisonment, had a way of making old enemies work together. As the device took shape, Elena noticed that Krixtal's observations had become more focused. The alien was spending more time studying human military history, human engineering projects, and human theoretical physics research. Elena wondered if their observer was starting to understand that the creatures it was studying were not quite as helpless as they appeared. The universe was about to find out what happened when you called humans barbarians and then gave them access to the fundamental forces of reality itself. The gravity hammer looked nothing like a weapon. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in the underground facility in Nevada, staring at the device that might either free humanity or destroy it completely. The machine filled a chamber the size of an aircraft hangar, its curved metal surfaces covered with sensors and electromagnetic field generators that hummed with barely contained energy. "It looks like a particle accelerator had a baby with a space telescope," Captain Sarah Morrison observed, running her hand along one of the massive focusing arrays. "That's not entirely wrong," Elena replied, checking readings on her tablet. "We're essentially building a gravitational lens that can reach across space and grab something the size of a proton." Dr. James Chen emerged from beneath the machine, his face smeared with lubricant from the exotic matter injection system. "The feeding mechanism is ready. Once we extract the black hole, we can start increasing its mass. The question is whether we can control the process." Elena looked at the calculations for the 100th time that day. The numbers were terrifying. They were planning to steal a microscopic black hole from an alien energy barrier, feed it exotic matter until it grew large enough to affect macroscopic objects, then use it to tear holes in the fabric of space and time. "Elena," Morrison said quietly, "I have to ask one more time. Are you absolutely sure this won't destroy the Earth?" Elena was quiet for a long moment. "I'm sure that if we do it exactly right, following every safety protocol, with perfect timing, and no equipment failures, we probably won't destroy the Earth." "Probably." James ran 1,000 simulations. In most of them, we either succeed completely or fail so quickly that we don't have time to cause permanent damage. It's the scenarios, where we partially succeed, that get really scary. James wiped his hands on a rag and joined the conversation. "The worst-case scenario is that we lose control of the black hole after we've fed it enough exotic matter to affect local space-time. In that case, we create a gravitational anomaly that could potentially what, James? Could potentially turn the Earth inside out." Morrison stared at them both. "And you want to do this anyway?" Elena gestured toward the ceiling, where somewhere above them, alien ships maintained their watch over humanity's prison. "Sarah, we've been trapped for 8 months. Every attempt at diplomacy has been ignored. Every attempt at escape has failed. The aliens have made it clear that they consider us too violent and primitive to ever join galactic civilization. So we're going to prove them wrong by building a weapon of mass destruction? We're going to prove them wrong by showing that human barbarism includes the courage to attempt the impossible when freedom is at stake. The truth was that Elena had been thinking about the alien perspective for months. The Galactic Concordat saw human competition and conflict as signs of primitive barbarism. They had achieved peace by eliminating the traits that made species dangerous. But Elena was beginning to suspect that those same traits were what made species capable of real achievement. The aliens had advanced technology, but they had achieved it through millions of years of slow, careful progress. They had eliminated risk-taking, eliminated the drive to push beyond safe boundaries. Humans had gone from horse-drawn carriages to space travel in less than 2 centuries, precisely because they were willing to take insane risks and attempt impossible things. The gravity hammer was the most human project Elena could imagine. It was dangerous, ambitious, and based on theoretical physics that most scientists would consider too risky to test. It was exactly the kind of thing that civilized aliens would never attempt. Over the past month, Elena's team had noticed changes in the alien observation patterns. Crixatal, the mantis-like observer, had been scanning human facilities more frequently. The scans were subtle, but Elena's detection equipment was picking up focused gravitational wave pulses directed at military, installations, and research centers. Crixatal knows we're up to something, James reported during one of their secure briefings. The scanning patterns suggest it's looking for large-scale construction projects and exotic matter research. Elena had been expecting this. Crixatal had been studying human scientific thinking for months. If the alien understood human methods, it would eventually realize that humans trapped in an impossible situation would try to do something impossible to escape. "How long do we have?" Morrison asked. "Maybe a week before Crixatal figures out what we're actually building," Elena estimated. "Once it understands what the gravity hammer is designed to do, it'll warn the other aliens. They'll either destroy us immediately or strengthen the barriers beyond our ability to breach." Morrison nodded, grimly. "Then we move up the timeline. Can we be ready for the first test in 3 days?" Elena looked at James, who ran quick calculations on his tablet. "We can have the extraction system online in 72 hours if we work around the clock. The exotic matter feeding system still needs calibration, but we can do basic tests." Morrison ordered. "Elena, I know you wanted more time to run simulations, but we're out of options." The next 3 days blurred together in a haze of final preparations and system checks. Elena found herself sleeping in the facility, grabbing a few hours of rest between calibration sessions and safety protocol reviews. The exotic matter they needed for feeding the black hole had been produced by particle accelerators around the world. Each facility could only create tiny amounts before the process became too dangerous to continue. The combined efforts of 12 countries had produced enough exotic matter to increase their stolen black hole's mass by a factor of several million, if everything went perfectly. On the morning of the test, Elena stood in the control room watching her screens display readings that no human had ever seen before. The gravity hammer's extraction beam was locked onto one of the quarantine barriers at the edge of the solar system, its gravitational sensors detecting the microscopic black hole that powered the alien technology. "All systems show green," reported Dr. Lisa Park, the lead engineer. "Gravitational lens is focused and stable. Exotic matter injection system is ready. Emergency containment fields are active." Elena looked around the control room at the faces of the people who had made this moment possible. Physicists, engineers, technicians, and military personnel from dozens of countries, all united in their determination to break free from the alien cage. "Elena," Morrison said quietly, "whatever happens in the next few minutes, I want you to know that this was the right choice. Humanity should not accept imprisonment, no matter how comfortable the cage." Elena nodded and placed her hand on the activation control. "Beginning extraction sequence in 3, 2, 1. The gravity hammer came to life with a sound like reality tearing. Every screen in the control room lit up with warnings as the device reached across space with invisible fingers of twisted gravity. Elena watched the readings as the extraction beam locked onto its target, a black hole smaller than an atom but denser than a neutron star. "Contact established," Dr. Park reported. her voice tight with concentration. Gravitational coupling is stable. Beginning extraction. Elena held her breath as the impossible became routine. Somewhere at the edge of the solar system, alien technology was being robbed of its power source by humans who had been told they were too primitive to touch the stars. Extraction successful, Park announced. We have containment. The black hole is isolated in the holding chamber. Elena looked at the readings and felt a mixture of triumph and terror. They had successfully stolen a microscopic black hole from an alien energy barrier. The easy part was done. Now came the hard part. Turning it into a weapon capable of tearing holes in space-time itself. James, begin exotic matter injection, Elena ordered. Low rate initially. We need to understand how it responds before we attempt rapid mass increase. As exotic matter began flowing into the containment chamber, Elena noticed new readings on her screens. The black hole was growing, its gravitational effects becoming detectable by their sensors. But more importantly, alarms were going off at the edge of the solar system. The quarantine barrier they had targeted was fluctuating wildly, its power source gone. The aliens were about to discover that the barbarians had learned to steal fire from the gods. Elena looked at the growing readings from their captured black hole and smiled grimly. Let the aliens call them primitive. Let them consider human violence and competition to be signs of barbarism. They were about to learn that sometimes barbarism was exactly what the universe needed. The universe noticed when humans started feeding their pet black hole. Dr. Elena Vasquez watched in fascination as gravitational wave detectors around the world registered the impossible. The microscopic black hole in their containment chamber was growing larger, and its appetite was growing with it. Each injection of exotic matter made the readings more dramatic, more dangerous, and more exciting. Mass has increased by factor of 50,000, Dr. James Chen reported from his monitoring station. The black hole is now roughly the size of a basketball, but with the mass of a small mountain. Elena checked the containment field readings. The magnetic and gravitational fields holding their weaponized black hole were straining, but holding steady. How long until we reach the threshold for space-time manipulation? At current feeding rates, approximately 6 hours, James calculated. But Elena, we're starting to detect side effects. On Elena's screen, new warnings appeared. The growing black hole was beginning to affect local gravity. Objects in the facility were becoming slightly heavier as the artificial gravitational field strengthened. More concerning, sensitive instruments were detecting minor distortions in the fabric of space and time around the containment chamber. Captain Sarah Morrison joined them at the monitoring station, her face grim. We just lost contact with 3 of our perimeter sensors. They didn't malfunction. The gravitational effects from your black hole simply twisted space enough to bend their signals away from us. Elena felt a chill of fear mixed with excitement. They were pushing into territory that no civilization in the galaxy had ever explored. The aliens had advanced technology, but they were too civilized to attempt something this dangerous. Only, humans were barbaric enough to weaponize the fundamental forces of the universe. Elena, James said urgently. We're getting incoming signals from the alien observation post. Crixtal is requesting immediate communication with Earth authorities. Elena's stomach dropped. They know! Morrison activated the communication system, and Crixtal's alien face appeared on their screens. The mantis-like creature's compound eyes reflected dozens of tiny images of the human control room. Dr. Vasquez, Crixtal said in perfect English, I must speak with you immediately. What you are attempting to do is beyond dangerous. It is impossible. Elena stepped forward to face the alien observer. Impossible is a very human word, Crixtal. We use it to describe things we haven't figured out how to do yet. You have extracted a quantum singularity from our barrier system, Crixtal continued, its voice carrying undertones of something that might have been fear. This should not be possible with your level of technology. You underestimated us, Elena replied. You saw our weapons and our competition and decided we were too primitive to join galactic civilization. You didn't realize that the same traits that make us violent also make us creative. Crixtal's head tilted in a gesture Elena had learned to recognize as confusion. Dr. Vasquez, my people have observed your species for months. We have seen your intelligence, your achievements, your potential. But what you are doing now proves our assessment correct. You are too dangerous to be allowed among civilized species. Elena felt anger flare in her chest. You locked us in a cage and told us it was for the good of the galaxy. Did you expect us to just accept imprisonment forever? We expected you to evolve beyond your violent nature, Crixtal replied. Instead, you have turned to weapons that could destroy entire solar systems. Morrison stepped up beside Elena. Maybe that's because you gave us no other choice. Diplomacy failed. Peaceful protest failed. You made it clear that nothing we could say or do would change your minds about us. Elena watched Crixtal's compound eyes as the alien processed this information. She was beginning to suspect that the mantis-like observer was not entirely comfortable with the Concordate's decision to quarantine humanity. Crixtal, Elena said carefully, in all your months of studying human behavior, what have you learned about how we respond to impossible situations? The alien was quiet for a long moment. You attempt solutions that other species would consider too risky to try. And you often succeed where more cautious approaches would fail. Elena nodded. Then you understand why we built this weapon. You trapped us in an impossible situation, so we're attempting an impossible solution. Alarms began sounding throughout the facility. James checked his readings and announced, Mass increase has accelerated. The black hole is drawing in exotic matter faster than our injection rate. It's becoming self-sustaining. Elena's excitement mixed with terror as she realized what was happening. Their weaponized black hole had reached the threshold where it could actively feed itself by converting the exotic matter around it into additional mass. The process was beyond their control now. Elena, Morrison said urgently, how long until we can use it as a weapon? The gravitational effects are already strong enough to disrupt the barrier system, James reported. But if we want to actually tear holes in space-time, we need to wait for the mass to increase by another factor of 10. And if something goes wrong during that time? Elena looked at the readings, showing space and time being twisted by their artificial black hole. If something goes wrong, we find out what happens when a weaponized singularity goes out of control inside a planetary. Gravity, well. Crixtal had been listening to this exchange with growing alarm. Dr. Vasquez, you must stop this process immediately. The forces you are manipulating could destabilize your entire solar system. Or they could tear through your barriers and give humanity access to the galaxy, Elena replied. We've already committed to this path, Crixtal. The only question now is whether we succeed or die trying. The alien observer stared at the humans with something that Elena finally recognized as horrified admiration. Your species would risk universal destruction rather than accept imprisonment? Morrison answered. For all of them. Every single time. Crixtal was quiet for several seconds. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, it said, I have been studying your history for months. Your wars, your competitions, your endless drive to push beyond safe boundaries. I thought these traits made you barbaric. And now? Elena asked. Now, I begin to understand that these traits might be what the galaxy has been missing. Elena was about to respond when every alarm in the facility began screaming at once. On her screens, she watched in amazement as their weaponized black hole suddenly doubled in mass, then doubled again. It's reached critical threshold, James announced. The space-time distortions are becoming macroscopic. Elena, we can target the barrier system now, but Elena was looking at different readings on her screen. James, check the long-range sensors. What's happening at the edge of the solar system? James's face went pale as he read the data. Elena, the entire Concordate fleet is powering up their weapons. They're not just going to stop us. They're going to destroy Earth before we can complete the weapon. Elena felt time slow down around her as she realized the situation. Their black hole weapon was almost ready, but the aliens were preparing to annihilate humanity before it could be used. They had minutes, maybe less, before the most advanced military force in the galaxy opened fire on Earth. Morrison was already activating emergency protocols. All stations, prepare for immediate deployment of the gravity hammer. We're out of time. Elena looked at Crixtal's image on the screen. The alien observer was watching the readings from both the human facility and the Concordate fleet. Its compound eyes reflected the lights of weapons charging and reality bending around a weaponized black hole. Crixtal, Elena said urgently. "If you've learned anything about human nature, you know we won't surrender. Your fleet can destroy us, but they can't stop what we've already set in motion." The alien observer stared at Elena for a long moment. Then it did something that surprised everyone in the control room. Krikstal began transmitting human facility data to select members of the Concordate fleet, information about evacuation routes, safe distances, and emergency procedures for dealing with weaponized singularities. Elena realized that their observer had made a choice. Krikstal was helping them. "You crazy alien," Morrison muttered with something like affection. "You're actually going to help us." Elena looked at her screens showing the approaching alien weapons and their reality-warping black hole weapon. The universe was about to witness something that had never happened before. Barbarians with access to the fundamental forces of creation and destruction. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes being civilized meant being willing to accept impossible odds rather than surrender your freedom. Elena placed her hand on the weapon activation controls and prepared to show the universe what human barbarism could accomplish when backed into a corner by those who called themselves civilized. The last thing Ambassador Zethkari expected was for the barbarians to show mercy. Dr. Elena Vasquez watched the Concordate fleet's weapons charging through her screens, while her own weaponized black hole reached critical mass in its containment chamber. The gravitational readings were off the scale. Space and time were bending like soft metal around their artificial singularity. "Elena," Dr. James Chen called out, "the Concordate fleet will reach optimal firing position in 90 seconds. If we're going to use the gravity hammer, it has to be now." Elena looked at the tactical display showing 12 massive alien warships moving into formation around Earth. Each ship was larger than any human city and armed with weapons that could crack planets. Against conventional military thinking, humanity didn't have a chance. But the gravity hammer wasn't conventional anything. Captain Sarah Morrison stood beside Elena at the firing controls. "Elena, I need you to understand something. Once we activate this weapon, there's no taking it back. We'll have announced to the entire galaxy that humans can weaponize black holes." Elena nodded, her hand hovering over the activation sequence. "And they'll either respect us for it or try to destroy us before we can do it again." 60 seconds to optimal firing position, James announced. On the communication screen, Krikstal's compound eyes reflected the chaos of data flowing between human and alien systems. The mantis-like observer had been providing evacuation information to select Concordat ships, the ones whose crews might survive what was about to happen. "Dr. Vasquez," Krikstal said urgently, "Ambassador Zethkari is demanding that I cease all communication with your species. The Concordat has decided that immediate termination is the only option." Elena felt a cold anger settle in her chest. After months of imprisonment, after rejecting every attempt at diplomacy, the aliens had decided that destroying humanity was easier than admitting they might have been wrong. "Krikstal," Elena said, "I want you to record what happens next. Make sure the galaxy understands exactly what human barbarism looks like when we're pushed too far." Elena activated the gravity hammer. The effect was immediate and impossible. The weaponized black hole, now massive enough to warp space-time on a macroscopic scale, reached out with invisible fingers of twisted gravity toward the quarantine barriers. At the edge of the solar system, every screen in the facility lit up with warnings as reality bent around their artificial singularity. The containment chamber held, but barely. Elena could see the metal walls beginning to stretch and deform as space itself was pulled toward their black hole weapon. "Firing solution locked," Elena announced. Targeting the primary barrier nexus, she pressed the activation control. The gravity hammer fired a focused beam of gravitational distortion that crossed the solar system in seconds. When it hit the alien barrier system, the effect was spectacular and terrifying. The quarantine barriers, which had been impenetrable for months, simply tore apart. Holes appeared in the energy fields as space-time itself was ripped open by the gravitational weapon. The beautiful, impossible walls that had trapped humanity crumbled like paper in a hurricane. But Elena wasn't done. "Secondary targets locked," she announced, turning the weapon toward the Concordate fleet. The alien warships had been moving into attack formation when reality suddenly became unreliable around them. Elena watched on her screens as 3 of the massive vessels were caught in the artificial event horizons, their crews experiencing time dilation as they fell toward horizons that existed only because humans had made them exist. 2 more ships tried to retreat, but found their engines, useless against gravitational fields that treated faster-than-light travel like a suggestion rather than a law of physics. "Elena," Morrison said quietly, "you can destroy them all." Elena looked at the tactical display showing the most advanced military force in the galaxy, helpless against a weapon that shouldn't exist. The Concordate ships were trapped, their weapons useless, their technology meaningless against forces that operated on the fundamental level of reality itself. She could end this fight permanently. She could eliminate the threat to humanity forever. Instead, Elena did something that shocked everyone in the control room, including herself. She turned off the gravity hammer. "Elena!" Morrison shouted. "What are you doing? They were about to destroy Earth!" Elena looked at the screens showing alien ships caught in gravitational distortions, but still intact. "Sarah, they called us barbarians because they thought we were too violent to join civilized society. If I destroy their fleet, I prove them right. But they were going to kill us. And now they can't," Elena replied. "The barriers are down. Their weapons are neutralized. They're helpless. This is our chance to prove that humans can show mercy even when we have the power to destroy our enemies." Elena activated the communication system and broadcast to the entire Concordate fleet. "Ambassador Zeth Kari, this is Dr. Elena Vasquez. As you can see, your assessment of human capabilities was incomplete." The crystalline alien's face appeared on screen, its expression unreadable, but its body language suggesting shock and confusion. You have created impossible weapons. You have violated fundamental laws of physics. We've shown you what happens when you trap creatures who refuse to accept cages," Elena replied. "But more importantly, we've shown you something your civilization seems to have forgotten, which is, we've shown you mercy. Your fleet is helpless. Your ships are trapped in gravitational fields that we control completely. We could destroy you all without effort." Elena paused, letting that reality sink in. "But we won't. Despite everything you've done to us, despite your attempts to destroy our world, we're going to let you go." The silence from the alien fleet was deafening. Krixtal's voice broke the quiet. "Dr. Vasquez, the Concordate leadership is confused. They do not understand why you would spare us after we attempted to annihilate your species." Elena smiled grimly. "Because, Krixtal, true strength isn't the ability to destroy your enemies. True strength is having the power to destroy them and choosing not to." Elena began powering down the gravitational distortions holding the alien ships. One by one, the Concordate vessels found themselves free to move, their weapons and engines restored to functionality. Ambassador Zeth Kari stared at Elena through the communication screen. "You are releasing us after we attempted to destroy your world?" "We're releasing you," Elena confirmed, "but with conditions. The quarantine around humanity is permanently ended. We demand recognition as equals in galactic society. And we want formal apologies for the months of imprisonment. And if we refuse," Elena gestured toward the gravity hammer, which was still powered and ready to fire, "then we'll show you exactly how barbaric humans can be when our patience runs out. The difference is now you know what we're capable of." Over the next hour, Elena watched in amazement as the most advanced civilization in the galaxy negotiated a surrender with the species they had called primitive barbarians. The Concordate agreed to all human demands. The quarantine was officially ended. Humanity was granted full membership in galactic society with all associated rights and privileges. Formal apologies were issued by all 12 member species. More importantly, Elena received authorization to begin liberating other species that the Concordate had quarantined for being too violent or insufficiently civilized. 6 months later, Elena stood on the observation deck of humanity's first interstellar embassy, watching ships from dozens of previously quarantined species arriving for the inaugural meeting of what they were calling the Barbarian Coalition. Krixtal joined her at the observation window, the mantis-like alien having requested transfer to the human diplomatic mission. "Dr. Vasquez," Krixtal said, "I have been reviewing the Concordate's historical records. We have quarantined over 200 species in the past million years. Most of them for traits that, in hindsight, might have been valuable rather than dangerous. Elena nodded. Competition drives innovation. Conflict teaches problem-solving. Risk-taking enables breakthrough discoveries. The traits you called barbaric might be exactly what the galaxy needs. The Concordat achieved peace by eliminating danger, Crixtal observed. But we also eliminated progress. Elena looked out at the ships gathering for the conference, species that had been dismissed as too violent, too competitive, too willing to take risks. Maybe it's time the galaxy learned that a little barbarism is exactly what civilized society needs to keep growing. Crixtal's compound eyes reflected the lights of 100 different species working together for the first time in galactic history. Dr. Vasquez, I believe you may have just revolutionized civilization itself. Elena smiled as she watched former prisoners becoming partners, former enemies becoming allies, and former barbarians showing the galaxy what true civilization looked like. Sometimes, she reflected, the best way to prove you deserved freedom was to show mercy to those who had tried to take it away. The universe had learned an important lesson. Never underestimate what barbarians could accomplish when you gave them something impossible to overcome, especially when those barbarians happened to be human.